This week we're bringing our sermon series to a close on those final sayings of Jesus from the cross. And we've talked about how powerful these words have been as they've been spoken in the last moments of his life. And as I was preparing for these last words spoken in Luke from the cross for us, it had me thinking about how you and I, how the average person does as we think about what our last words are going to be that we're speaking. And sometimes we don't know they're our last words, do we? They just end up being. And I was coming across a sample for today, and I wanted to share some of those with you. Many of you in my age, range and older, will remember this name, George Reeve. George Reeve was the original television Superman. His last words were this: "I'm tired, I'm going back to bed." Not exactly profound. Or FDR, who said, "I have a terrific headache," and shortly after that had a brain aneurysm. Sometimes we don't know what our last words are going to be. The famous Doc Holliday, it said that his last words were, "This is funny." And so sometimes we're not very profound, and other times we get more profound. And I was thinking about that. Thomas Edison said, "It's very beautiful over there." Elizabeth I of England said, "All my possessions I would give for one more moment of time." George Eastman said, "My work is done, why wait?" And I was thinking most of all of Emily Dickinson, who said, "The fog is rising." Last words can be interesting. They can be not even appropriate. They can be all kinds of things. But Jesus' last words from the cross were so extremely important and powerful for us. And these last words today were that way. "Lord, into your hands I commend my spirit." And it's so natural that we look for the meaning of the cross at this moment. Jesus is breathing his last breath. He is giving up his spirit. So we begin to struggle and we want to know, well, what is the meaning behind the cross? Why did this have to happen? And we grapple for that. Theologians for 2,000 years have tried to get their brains around and their words around exactly what the meaning of the cross is, exactly what is said there. They've tried to find the correct story or metaphor, the way of saying it. But I think what we need to notice and recognize is this about these last words, about the meaning of the cross, that Jesus was doing more in his act, in his giving of his life, than any one theory could ever explain. You see, I believe that Jesus' death was more of a sermon than a transaction. It wasn't one moment that we could quantify. It was a sermon to inform us, not just in the moment before our lives, over and over again, to give power to our lives and help us understand what is going on. What happened in the cross, what happened in Jesus' sacrifice and death was so profound, it was so mysterious, it was so life-giving and so life-changing that no explanation can ever do it justice. I love what Adam Hamilton said or wrote about this. Adam Hamilton is the pastor of the largest United Methodist Church in the United States, in the world actually. And he said this: "I used to get stuck grappling with this, and then I came to realize that the cross is not math or science, it is poetry lived out in human flesh. The cross is divine drama, revealing for us the darkness of our human natures and the relentless grace and love of God." You see, that's what we see in that death on the cross. Jesus' grace and love for us even to the bitter end, and even to the very end of his life. And so he prays this wonderful line of prayer from the cross: "O Lord, into your hands I commend my spirit." And what's important, I think, for us to recognize here is this isn't just the only line of a prayer. In fact, Jesus is quoting from Psalm 31, which in itself was a prayer. And I want to share those words with you because I want to put in context those last words, because those there, those that knew the Scripture, knew the deeper meaning of what Jesus was saying when he said these words. And the psalm goes like this: "In you, Lord, I have taken refuge. Never let me be put to shame. Deliver me in your righteousness. Turn your ear to me. Come quickly to my rescue. Be my rock of refuge, a strong fortress to save me. Since you are my rock and my fortress, for the sake of your name, guide me. Keep me free from the trap that is set for me, for you are my refuge. And into your hands I commend my spirit." And in these final words, "Lord, my faithful God." In the midst of all Jesus had been through, in the midst of the struggle and the pain on the cross, he still had within him, in his final moments, the understanding at the depth of his being that God was faithful and that God was his refuge. What Jesus demonstrated here with these kind of words is an absolute trust in God. Remember what we've talked about these last few weeks, that when Jesus gives us these words to which he dies by, he's giving us words to which we can live by. And we can live by these wonderful words, because in spite of all Jesus had been through, in spite of the questioning and the doubt that he had as he struggled in the Garden of Gethsemane and on his way to the cross, in spite of facing darkness and despair, in spite of facing the valley of the shadow of death, in spite of facing fears of the unknown, Jesus knew something. It's not about having all the answers. It's about trusting in the God that has all the answers. So Jesus, even in those moments of doubt and frustration, even when he did not know the answers to why what had happened, he knew this: that God was his refuge. And God was a faithful God. So even in these moments, he could cry out, "Oh Lord, into your hands I commend my spirit." What a powerful, absolute statement of faith and trust. And in this, Jesus is giving us something to live our lives by. We live in a world right now, it seems like for the past many, many years, has been consumed with worrying about when the world is going to end. Have you noticed that? You can't hardly turn on the TV. In fact, I'm sure they've readjusted the Mayan calendar so we can get an update on when the world is going to end. And we look at all these things and we wonder and we guess and we prepare and we try to calculate, and yet all of those things are unbiblical. Because Jesus said that no one would know the hour and no one would know the day. And he also said you have nothing to worry about. If God takes care of the least of these, God will take care of you. And so it's amazing what we do. It was amazing how we struggle to do it. Maybe you're one of those people. Maybe you're one of those people that are preparing for the end. You think the best thing you can do is to stockpile, let's say, food, now, or water, or guns. I see they're doing that. I always wonder, because to me, here's what I believe. That phrase, the end of the world, I guess when the world ends, it's over. I'm not sure those canned foods and those guns are going to do you a lot of good. You know, but sometimes we get so caught up in thinking we can still save ourselves. Somehow we can do it if we can find the right fortress, the right cave, the right foods, the right weapons. We can save ourselves. But Jesus reminds us that's not the way to prepare. It's not the way to prepare for what lies ahead with storing things up. In fact, it has nothing to do with any of that. What it has to do with is Jesus. You want to prepare, it all has to do with Jesus. We have to commit ourselves to being a disciple, to following Jesus. to imitating Jesus, to living like Jesus. You see, that's what it's about. It's trusting in God as Jesus trusted in God. So what does it mean to be ready? What does it mean to be ready, to be prepared? We have to look to Jesus, and we have to say, we can look back on our lives and say these things. If we have lived well, if we have given for others like Jesus gave, even unto his death upon a cross, Jesus gave for others. If we can look upon our life and say we have loved all, by the way. You see, that's one of our struggles. We're pretty good at loving some, but Jesus loved all. So you want to prepare, love all, love everybody as Jesus did, and faithfully serve God. That's the way we prepare. We commit our spirits to God, not just in the future, but now. Right now, in this moment, that's the way we prepare. Sometimes I feel I give too many personal examples and messages, but I wanted to share this because it fits so perfectly today. Many of you know that I lost one of my grandsons this last summer, Carter, at 7.5. And Carter had struggled with so many illnesses, and he'd been through so much. I was thinking about that in between services and the surgeries he'd been through. And the way he was such a trooper and such a fighter. But then last spring, his brain started not sending the right impulses to his body. And at times he could stop breathing or his heart would just stop. And so they were trying to determine what to do. And there was a lot of people that tried to influence my daughter and her husband to just say, oh, just keep doing all of these procedures. And the doctors really helped them understand that none of the procedures were going to extend his life for much longer. And so they made that decision for his last months to be peaceful ones, filled with joy and family. And they could decide that when they could finally say, even in this moment, we trust in God. And we are commending Carter's spirit to God now. And that's what they did. But I still remember about a week after Carter passed, I just returned home, and my daughter called me, and she was in tears. And she said, Dad, I just need a sign. I trust God, but I just need a sign to know that God is holding Carter in his arms, and that Carter is safe, and Carter has received what we think we have promised. And about the same time, her 4-year-old daughter came to her and said, I needed to make out this card and color this card to send to Carter in heaven because Carter was wanting a card. And I said, you have your sign. Because even Jesus said, if you want to get close to God, be like the little children. And so she had her sign that indeed she had commended the spirit of her son to God. And just as God had trusted, Jesus had trusted in God, she did. And she had faith in where Carter was. My message for today is this for each and every one of you. I encourage you in this moment to commend your spirits into the hands of God. Don't wait for death, but do it in the midst of life. And commend all of who you are to becoming a disciple of Christ and following in the ways of Jesus. Thanks be to God for this opportunity. Amen.